Good afternoon and happy holidays. Welcome to one of the final shows of the year of the PSA Dude. There's a lot going on in Houston, a lot that's coming to an end at the end of the year, so we've got a lot of great events to announce for you today. We're at the Sculpture Garden, part of the Museum of Fine Arts, and we'll be meeting with curator Allison de Lima Green. We've got a lot of great art to look at and a lot of things to bring to you, so join us inside.
Excuse me while I talk to my accountant. I like the swordfish, you keep in a tank. I like the seabills, you keep in the bank. I like the purple holes and purple shoes.
Well, we're standing here with Allison de Lima Green, curator of contemporary and modern art at the Museum of Fine Arts. Hi, Allison.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Can you tell us about how the Sculpture Garden came into being?
This is a project that actually started at the museum in the late 1970s. We built the Glassell School of Art, which you see behind me, and once it opened, we began planning how could we link the school and the museum with a sculpture garden space. And we looked around at gardens around the country and we thought we wanted an urban garden. We didn't want it to be all grassy, a place that could actually function as an outdoors art gallery. Meeting the standards of museums like the Museum of Modern Art, whose beautiful garden was designed by Philip Johnson. And after we decided that was our standard, we began looking at we didn't want to imitate that. We were looking for someone who did not have as much exposure in this region, and Isamu Noguchi had a great record of sculpture garden building, and in particular his museums in Israel. The Israel Museum had a wonderful garden that was a perfect context not just for his art but also for the art of other artists. And so we approached him. He came up with an initial plan, and this was under the tenureship of Bill Agee, who was director of the museum at that time. We then launched a capital campaign. We bought some important sculpture to sort of announce our commitment. For example, the Matisse backs, which are installed in the south corner of the garden, were among our first acquisitions. And it wasn't, however, until the early 80s, when Peter Marzia became director, that we really got the financial momentum and the city permits to start. It was thanks to the generosity of Lily and Hugh Roy Cullen, whose name is on the walls of this garden, and their foundation. Actually, it was the Cullen Foundation that made the garden possible to launch into. We broke ground here in 1985, and we opened the garden on April 15th, I believe it was, or April 10th, 1986, which was the anniversary of the museum's first opening, when we opened our first building.
So it's been almost 20 years now.
I know, it's been fun watching it grow. When I first got here, this was flat. None of the hills and burns that you see here existed. It was a mud hole. We had a water main leaking underneath. I lost a pair of shoes walking across here once. And it was an incredible vision that shaped this garden into a sculpture. And over the 20 years, what has been one of the great pleasures is seeing the trees grow. You look at the photographs taken at the inauguration, and it looks like, it's a garden of twigs. And now we've actually had to thin some of the trees as they've gained in majesty.
And how has the art work itself, how did the sculptures evolve over time? Is it a permanent collection?
A lot of the work here is our permanent collection, but we don't want the garden to be static. Just as trees grow and change, so have our installations. And sometimes, literally, we change our installations because a sculpture that looks next to a small tree doesn't look so well next to a large tree. So some pieces that were here have literally been taken away. Other pieces have been added in. We worked with a number of artists on site-specific installations. For example, the Ellsworth Kelly, the Houston Triptych, was one of the first site-specific pieces that we commissioned after we opened the garden. We also commissioned a work by Houston artist Jim Love, which is in the north corner of the garden. Tony Craig responded particularly to that configuration with his two pieces. And so those pieces we would probably not move because they are so responsive, particularly to the site. But other pieces we have shifted around. The Calder crab was in the garden when we opened the building. We then had it in front of the entrance of the law building for many years. We brought it back in here recently again, but in a different position. The other thing we've been very fortunate with is several loans. For example, a private collection in Houston has put on long-term loan to us a wonderful Max sculpture, which you can see not quite behind me, but if you visit the garden, you can see it there. We also have been extremely fortunate that Edward Arbroida has allowed us to borrow some very important pieces from his collection, including works by Marc de Souvero, Richard Serra, and more historically, people like Henri Lorenz.
Well, that's great. Can you tell us, how is the artwork maintained in this external? It's outside. I'm wondering
I've learned
how
a
it
lot.
survives.
Well, first of all, we did discover that certain kinds of work does better out here than others. We launched into a scientific survey very early on to make sure that we were not letting anything get damaged by being out here. For example, marble, the most beautiful substance of antique sculpture as well as modern, would not survive in our high acid climate. It would get pockmarked over time, and so we don't have any marble works out here. Alternately, because there's granite paving here already and concrete walls, we weren't looking for work that would, blend in too much or, and we actually found that in general, steel and bronze are the materials that stand out most importantly in this context. And we have a weekly system of just doing day-to-day maintenance. Some of our staff come out here who are specially trained, washing things off, as one would. But we also have a contract with specialists who come in at least once a year and examine the artwork. We put special kinds of waxes or other coatings to protect the surfaces of many of the pieces, just to make sure that we're good stewards for the garden.
And how can you just tell for everyone watching out there how they might come to the garden? When is it open to the public?
It's open to the public daily from 9 a.m. till I think it's 10 p.m. Still, we wanted it to be a public site. Indeed, the city is partner with us in the garden. It is a public garden. Therefore, the garden is open longer hours than the museum. It's very much a favorite spot in the neighborhood. I've seen romances blossom here. I've seen children's parties here. We want people to bring their picnics and sit on the grass. We don't want this to be too formal a space. We wanted a public space for enjoyment. We have 3 entries, one right on Montrose Boulevard next to the school, one on Bissonnette Street opposite the entrance to the museum, and people who use the parking lot that belongs to the Presbyterian Church can also come in the sort of back way over here. So there's a fair amount of access.
Great. Well, thank you for having us today, and I'm sure everyone will come enjoy the beautiful weather in the sculpture garden.
Can I just add a postscript?
Yes.
This is a great winter garden. It's a lovely time of year to be out here. You see the leaves falling on some of the trees, but thanks to Houston's climate, it's a nice place to come.
Well, it's a gorgeous day today.
Yes. Thank you.
Our first PSA today comes from the Alley Theater. Remember that this week is the last run for A Christmas Carol. The show will end on Sunday, December 28th. A Christmas Carol, the timeless tale about the world's favorite miser, Ebenezer Scrooge, who gets a visit from the spirits of his past, present, and future, is a Houston holiday tradition. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, remember, get out now. You can visit the Alley Theater website for more information. The address is on the screen. This guy is running to the battleship Texas for the Yuletide Texas celebration. The staff and volunteers aboard the battleship Texas have decked the bulkheads with boughs of holly. The event started on December 1st and runs through the end of the month. It will be open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. See the ship decorated throughout the month of December, adorned with lights, ornaments, and decorations in the spirit of the season, just the way the crew members did while serving their country aboard the historic Navy vessel in the 1940s. Texas Parks and Wildlife Ship Manager Barry Ward said Yuletide Texas was inspired by historic photographs from the ship's archives, depicting crew member spaces decorated for the holidays. Remember, we've only got one more week left. For more information, you can visit the Texas Parks and Wildlife site online at the address on the screen. Two Circle Sentinel. This is the piece we're standing in front of now. Remember, this is the last week to see the cool art exhibit going on at Super Happy Funland. In the Super Happy Funland Gallery, they're presenting the work of Philip Durbin and Arthur Bates. Super Happy Funland, yet another of Houston's litany of eclectic underground arts venues, is open in the Heights. For more information on the art exhibit and other events going on at Super Happy Funland, you can visit them online at the address on the screen. These are the Matisse backs that Allison was referring to earlier, a very memorable part of the sculpture garden. Our next PSA is coming again from the Children's Museum. Remember that all month we've been announcing the Festival of Lights, a series of events occurring at the Children's Museum. This month, this week, we have one of the final events in the series, the Kwanzaa celebration. Kwanzaa is an African American tradition of 7 nights of candlelighting, representing the 7 principles: unity, self-determination, responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. This Wonder Weekend celebration begins Saturday, December 27th and runs through Sunday, December 28th. That's this weekend at the Children's Museum. So for more information, visit them online at the address on the screen. We're standing next to Large Standing Woman 1 by Giacometti, my favorite piece in the sculpture garden. And we're going to bring you our final PSA today from the Contemporary Arts Museum. Remember that the Abraham Cruz Villegas show, on display now downstairs in the Contemporary Arts Museum, will be shown through January 4th. It ends in 2 weeks. Also, the Matthew Ritchie show has recently opened upstairs. There's lots of great things going on at the CAM. For more information, you can visit them online at the address on the screen, or just come down any day to Montrose and Bissonnette and check it out for yourself. Well, we're bringing you our closing in front of Fontana's Spatial Concepts, which is a child I always thought were called Spaceballs, but that's not right. They're a spatial concept. In any case, this is the end of our program, one of the final programs of the year. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, if you would like to have your announcement read on the PSA Dude, email us at the address on the screen.